Let's take a look at those organisms living in the water ecosystems known as aquatic ecosystems. So conditions underwater. Now, aquatic organisms are affected primarily by the water's depth, temperature, flow, and the amount of dissolved nutrients, oxygen, nitrogen, and those other elements that the organism needs to live and survive. Now, water depth strongly influences life because sunlight only penetrates a short distance through the water. The area where sunlight penetrates and allows for photosynthesis to happen is called the photic zone, photo meaning light. In the tropical seas, the photic zone can be around 200 meters deep, but only a few meters deep in lakes or swamps, and we'll talk about why in a few moments. Now, below the photic zone is the aphotic zone, A meaning not, photo meaning light, meaning there is no light here. And this is where photosynthesis cannot occur because the sunlight doesn't reach this far down. Now, many aquatic organisms live on or in rocks and sediments on the bottom of rivers, lakes, and oceans. These are called benthos, and their habitat is called the benthic zone. Now, if the water is shallow for benthos to be in the photic zone, then photosynthetic autotrophs populate. Now, remember, autotrophs, we have the word auto, meaning they're going to automatically make their own food using the sun's energy, using that solar energy. If it is below the photic zone, then chemosynthetic autotrophs populate, chemo meaning chemical, and those autotrophs will use chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide coming out of volcanic vents. So here's a picture that sums up the photic and aphotic zone. So here in the photic zone, sunlight is going to reach. In the aphotic zone, down here, we're not going to have any sunlight, and we'll have chemosynthetic autotrophs populating here, while in the photic zone, we'll have photosynthetic autotrophs populating here, and then we'll have various organisms that are not producers populating throughout. Okay, so we said that in lakes or swamps, it's a few meters deep. In the ocean, it goes about 200 meters deep. If you take a look at this picture of the ocean, you can see the sunlight rays coming through, and it's going to go down to about 200 meters, and that's pretty far. If you look at lakes or swamps, it's not as clear. It's often pretty murky, and that's why it can only penetrate a few meters deep as opposed to 200 meters deep. Now, this does not mean that every lake and swamp that you encounter will be this murky, but most of them are, and that's why most of the time it's only a few meters deep, not all the time, because there are some lakes that are very beautiful and very clear. All right, moving along to temperature and currents. Now, the water is warmer near the equator than the poles, just like the land is, and that's because the water is receiving direct sunlight instead of indirect sunlight. Water depth also plays a factor. The deeper the water, the colder it is, and vice versa. The water near the top is often going to be warmer, and it's at the top because it is less dense. Now, currents can affect ocean temperature because it can carry warm water or cooler water to areas that aren't typical for the latitude or region that it's in. Aquatic organisms, and all life for that matter, need nutrients to survive. Now, here's a reminder of what those nutrients are. Each organism needs oxygen, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Now, the type and availability of these dissolved substances vary within and between bodies of water, affecting the types of organisms that can live there. Now, freshwater ecosystems. Now, freshwater ecosystems can be divided into three main categories: rivers and streams, lakes and ponds, and freshwater wetlands. Rivers and streams and the brooks, or brooks, often originate from underground water sources. Near the source of the water, it has plenty of dissolved oxygen, but little nutrients. Further downstream, sediments settle, so you will find plant life. Further downstream, the river may meander through flatlands where you can find animals who need the water to survive. With lakes and ponds, the food webs in lakes are based on plankton. Now, this includes both phytoplankton and zooplankton. Now, water typically flows in and out of lakes and ponds, circulating heat, oxygen, and nutrients. Then we have freshwater wetlands. Now, a wetland is an ecosystem in which water either covers the soil or is present at or near the surface at that soil for at least part of the year. Now, wetlands are often nutrient rich and serve as breeding grounds for many organisms. Wetlands purify water by filtering out pollutants, helps prevent flooding in the area by absorbing large amounts of water, and it slowly releases those large amounts of water throughout the year. Now, there are three main types of wetlands. There are freshwater bogs, freshwater marshes, and freshwater swamps. Now, if the wetland is saltwater, then it's a special type of wetland, and we call that an estuary. So an estuary is a special kind of wetland where the river meets the sea, and because it's meeting the sea, it's going to contain salt water. So estuaries contain a mix of freshwater and saltwater. Many are shallow, where sunlight reaches the benthos, which use the sunlight for photosynthesis. Estuaries serve as spawning or nursery grounds for many ecologically and commercially important fish and shellfish species, including bluefish, striped bass, shrimp, and crabs. Salt marshes are temperate estuaries characterized by salt-tolerant grasses above the low tide line. And they got to be salt-tolerant, otherwise they would die. Because remember, an estuary is a mix of freshwater and saltwater. Mangrove swamps are tropical estuaries characterized by several species of salt-tolerant trees. And where's the largest mangrove area in the U.S.? Because the U.S. has a very large mangrove area, and that's actually down in Florida in the Everglades. All right, and marine ecosystems. Now, ecologists typically divide the ocean into zones based on depth and distance from the shore. We have what's called the intertidal zone, and this is right close to shore. We all have been to the beach, or if you've been to the beach, you have played in the intertidal zone. And organisms here are exposed to waves and extreme temperature change as the tide changes from low to high or high to low. When they are under the water, it can be nice and cool. When it's low tide, they're exposed to the sun, and they get very hot or warm. Now here, barnacles and algae attach themselves to rocks. Then we have what's called the coastal ocean beyond the intertidal zone. It extends from the low tide mark to the outer edge of the continental shelf. Now here, areas are brightly lit and is often supplied by nutrients from freshwater runoff from land. Then we have the open ocean. Now more than 90% of the ocean is considered open ocean. The depth starts about 500 meters and ranges to over 10,000 meters along the trenches. The open ocean is divided into the photic and aphotic zone. Photic zone, photo meaning light. Now the open ocean has low nutrient levels, so it supports a small species of phytoplankton, and occurs in the top 100 meters of the ocean because that phytoplankton is going to need some nutrients, and because the open ocean has such low nutrient levels, it's supporting just a small species of phytoplankton as opposed to a large amount. And then we have the aphotic zone out here in the open ocean. And here in the dark, food webs are supported by autotrophs using chemosynthesis or feeding on organic matter that dies in the photic zone and falls all the way to the bottom of the ocean floor, or to the bottom of the ocean floor. And remember, chemosynthesis, these are autotrophs who make their own food from chemicals, not the sunlight, because they're in the aphotic zone, meaning no light. Now, frigid temperatures and high pressure led scientists to think this area was without life, but scientists are finding new life here all the time as they research and start to explore the ocean. Well, that's going to be it for this. If you have any questions, always feel free to post a comment below. We'll see you guys next time.